Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Welcome back to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast. I'm excited to bring today's guest on today because we have Dr. Usama Fayyad, and he is the Executive Director of Institute for Experiential AI at Northeastern University. And the Institute is a game-changing research centre that is focused on developing practical, responsible AI solutions to real-world problems and ultimately shaping the next generation of AI talent. And a couple of reasons why I'm so excited about this is critics often say AI is just a buzzword. So if we can get AI focusing on solving real problems, that will improve how it is perceived out there. And also there's a lot of talk about the tech skill shortage. And also the pressure on kids at the moment that are studying for jobs that don't even exist yet. So tackling that problem as well means it's incredibly exciting to me. So today, Dr. Usama is going to discuss what the Institute will mean to the advancement of AI and experiential AI in particular, and the development of AI talent, the creation of AI solutions for real-world problems, and AI ethics and the promotion of responsible AI too. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to the US, where he's waiting to speak with us today. So a massive warm welcome to the show. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
I'm Usama Fayyad. I'm the inaugural Executive Director of the Institute for Experiential Artificial Intelligence at Northeastern University, and spent almost all of my life working in AI and machine learning. Was fortunate enough to be involved in the foundations of data science as a field. Worked, after my PhD at NASA, JPL on scientific data sets, then Microsoft on commercial databases. Then did a couple of startups, got acquired by Yahoo. Spent almost 5 years there building their data team as well as Yahoo Research. Then left and started my own company, Open Insights again. Took a break for about 3 years to go live in London and be the Global Chief Data Officer at Barclays Bank, actually mostly London and New York. Then after that, went back to Open Insights and also helped start a healthcare technology startup to learn about healthcare in the US and to introduce AI into that arena. And then, ended up at Northeastern when they contacted me and said that they've raised a lot of funds to create the world's top AI research institute.
Wow, you've got such a rich history in technology. And before we learn more about what you're doing at Northeastern University and that incredibly exciting experiential research, I've got to ask, can you remember the moment that originally sparked your passion for technology or what put you on this path, and ultimately share your origin story with us?
Yeah, I mean, I throughout, pre-university, I was very big into chemistry, and I thought I'd be a chemist and study chemistry. Entering, finishing O levels and coming to the US for university, started out in electrical engineering, and I would say the moment that sparked my interest was sometime in freshman year, my first year in college. At the second semester, I took a programming course, and in those days you had to use punch cards. So I got introduced to a punch card machine, and I realized, hey, we can talk to this computer and instruct it to do stuff. Then I discovered microcomputers and personal computers, and it completely changed my course. I continued with electrical engineering, but I added computer engineering, and from then on, I graduated to artificial intelligence. And that's probably the origin, was that first discovery of that you can instruct computers to do what you want them to do.
Absolutely love that. And of course, it was that path that would eventually lead you to Northeastern University, which is a global experiential research university built on a tradition of engagement with the world. But can you offer an overview of the difference that you're making and your mission at the university and how you're using technology there?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things that's been a disappointment, I would say, in artificial intelligence and in general, artificial intelligence has gone through a lot of cycles. It's gone through a couple of winters in its past where, it goes from being the buzz and everybody's interested in it to becoming a disappointment and nobody wants to talk about it. And that's typically driven by the fact that, we as a society tend to overhype the capabilities of computers and AI. And then, of course, nobody can deliver on that level of hype. That's happening again, by the way, and I think we'll probably experience our third AI winter. But throughout these winters, something really prospered, which is machine learning and data science. And that's primarily not because we've done great discoveries in algorithms. It's just that we have a lot more data, and we continue to get a lot more data over time. And that data are giving us some amazing advantages that in many cases seems magical and impossible. So the reason I say this background is the one area of artificial intelligence that has worked really well, or the areas where it has worked really well, have been areas of application, where you try to make that technology work on a real problem in the real world, facing real constraints, and then addressing the challenges and limitations of that technology. This has been happening a lot in the tech giants, in the very well-funded startups. It hasn't been happening in academia, where you're kind of isolated from these problems, which meant that a lot of the work in academia has not been as relevant as it should or could be. My mission at a place like Northeastern, which is, as you mentioned, grounded in the idea of finding problems in the real world and driving education to be kind of a useful tool to help people through lifetime learning, really kind of deal with these opportunities, aligned very well with my thoughts about AI and the fact that I've been in it for basically almost 3 decades and haven't seen the kind of progress that I expect on the academic front. So what we're doing that is making a huge difference is we're saying, look, let's engage, unlike most academia, let's engage with solving real problems. So delivering real solutions to real problems, working with partner companies and organizations. And let's use that context. We call it the AI Solutions Hub, where we build those solutions to basically drive 2 things. One is we drive a special kind of education, an experiential education, where we provide our learners, our students, with a supervised apprenticeship experience, kind of working in that AI Solutions Hub on a real problem with real constraints. What do you do when, half the data you get is missing and 1/3 of it is wrong? And, how do you make it work in a real application with real constraints? And how do you make it understandable, explainable to those who are going to use it? Because otherwise it will not see the light of day, no matter how good it is. Those kinds of issues, it's very akin to a residency program in medical school, where you kind of get to experience how medicine is practiced, which is very different than what you learn kind of in your classrooms in pedagogical learning. So that experience is very valuable and very much missing in the world of data science and in the world of AI practice. So that creates graduates that are much more qualified to start being productive on day one on the job. The second part that we use the AI Solutions Hub activities for is to discover where the research really ought to be. Meaning, here's where the limits of the state-of-the-art hits a wall. Here is where we need some research to be overlaid, and we have over 90 faculty members at the Institute for Experiential AI. We hire also our own research faculty, research scientists. So we create an agenda rooted in advancing the state of the art, making the technology work. And we think the most interesting, most exciting scientific problems are embedded in making those applications work. That's the philosophy I used when I founded Yahoo Research Labs, saying that the most interesting theoretical problems will be found in the most mundane of applications. And indeed, we experienced that as we developed things like social media and social trust and search algorithms and so forth. We believe AI needs that kind of philosophy very much, and that's what we're doing here. That is different than a typical academic research program.
And it was that recent launch of the Institute for Experiential AI that really put you on my radar. I'm curious, what is it that excites you about this release?
Look, we're at an age now where kind of the data is there.
Yeah.
Figuring out how to leverage that data through machine learning and through data science to make algorithms more intelligent, to enable them to work well, is a great possibility. What is missing is kind of an understanding of the fact that these algorithms can't be autonomous. They can't work on their own. These algorithms are best used in a context where there's a human in the loop, somebody who's giving feedback and saying, yeah, this is correct, this is interesting, this is not interesting. And that feedback needs to be continuous because, domains change, the market changes, the world changes, data changes. So having that uniquely human capability of common sense reasoning, of understanding the world, of injecting knowledge to overlay that data, is a critical path. That's what we call experiential AI with the human in the loop. And it's a human-centered AI designed to kind of amplify what humans do well and take it to next levels. And of course, to allow machines to work on the problems that humans aren't particularly great at, very repetitive, robotic-like tasks. You want the machine to be doing that while the human can contribute at a higher value. So that's what we mean by experiential AI. By the way, I would argue the biggest, most scalable implementation of machine learning and AI is web search, like Google search.
Yeah.
And what most people don't know is embedded in that search is retraining that algorithm on something called machine learned relevance. The algorithm that decides based on your, 2.5 average keyword, phrase query. The way we find the most relevant websites for that is highly dependent on a machine learning algorithm that gets retrained on a lot of features about the pages, about the domain, and so forth. And that training happens by humans saying, hey, move this result up, move this result down. Hey, this phrase is a meme and it means something completely different than what the words say. All that knowledge that a search engine cannot get. And that's how, day after day, over 2 decades of training multiple times a day, that search engine gets better and better and better until it looks like magic. So that is the power of experiential AI.
And I appreciate this is a pretty big question, but for all those business leaders listening to our conversation today, what are the best ways or best starting points to help traditional companies and industries begin to implement AI and get it moving beyond that buzzword status?
Yeah. And that's one of the big kind of motivations we have for the formation of the Institute, which is how do we democratize access to AI? How do we demystify it so people don't look at it as this magical thing, right? It's something that requires some basics. You have to have the right data sets simply because the AI algorithms are not smart enough and you need to feed them a lot of data of examples of inputs and outputs. You have to come up with a mechanism to kind of guide, label the data and tell the algorithms, hey, this is a desired situation, this is an undesirable situation. That demystification process is one that, where we need to kind of reach out to the business community, and we've been doing this, and kind of demystify what AI is. It's very simple, right? AI algorithms are super simple. They're also very naive. They're also, can be easily misguided by the wrong data or by biases in the data or by having missing data. So that awareness of realizing, hey, these are just additional computational tools here's how they fit in our business. Here's how I can help you predict where the market is going to shift in terms of consumer interest in a certain product. Here's how I can help you reactivate customers that you lost. Here's how I can help you retain customers and avoid losing them. Here's how I can help you predict where problems might happen and how frequently. Here's how I can help you potentially. I mean, let's say you're a telco. How do you do proactive care? Meaning, if I know I'm going to have an outage, can I reach out to my customers and notify them I know about the outage? Hey, you're going to lose internet or you're going to lose cell service for this long via SMS or via other messaging, to avoid them calling in with a lot of complaints, which drives a heck of a lot of costs. A lot of these things, once you explain them in terms of their business implications, and the business implications can be very dramatic and huge. In fact, this is why companies like Google and Facebook are in the valued in the hundreds of billions, and some companies have reached trillions of dollars in valuation, because they can actually figure out how to put those algorithms in the right business context and leverage them for certain problems that matter, of course, to those companies. We think this is doable by many other companies. They just need to have the formulation and the understanding that, hey, you approach this incrementally, you do it kind of one use case at a time. Here's how you build a platform underneath it to capture the data, to capture the labeling and the human feedback. Here's how you leverage it through algorithms. One recent interaction we had with a Canadian insurance company who operates big time in the US called Sun Life. We actually helped them identify opportunities. We call it the catalog of opportunities of where AI and data can help their business, their core business. Then we worked with them to prioritize the top problem. Then we committed to delivering a solution in the AI solution hub to that particular problem chosen. But we did something also different. We ran a practicum course in parallel to developing that solution, where students from the university who are studying data science, AI, etc., got to kind of participate and come up with their own solutions to that problem and interact with the delivery team. What happened was very interesting. Sun Life decided to send some of their actuaries, some of their employees to that course to take it. And, these folks came in saying, hey, we have no idea how to utilize these kind of new unstructured data sources like, data from the web or, textual data, et cetera. How does that fit in my Excel spreadsheet and in my actuarial models? And within a few months, they came out realizing, hey, this is completely demystified. There are these algorithms we can use for natural language processing. They can actually extract structure from this data. We can then use that structure in the following ways in our modeling and in our claims processing. And that was a huge eye-opener, both for the company, for the employees, and of course, for our students to be working in a real setting with real constraints and kind of real problems. And that's what gets me excited about, how do we make AI a reality for most businesses? And it should be.
And one of the things that we must talk about as well, of course, is with great power comes great responsibility. So can you expand on why we need to take responsible AI seriously too, as we start implementing this?
Yeah. These algorithms, and let's call them, advanced computations or artificial intelligence, when they reach that level of performance, and they can through the right training and the right time, when they reach that level, we enter zones where they could become dangerous, right? So that algorithm could be used to score the credit worthiness of a consumer. That algorithm could be used to rank where a page should show up when you do a query, like on Google. And a variance in that algorithm can make or break entire industries. In the case of Google, right? People who lose their ranking in the web search suddenly go from a thriving, surviving business to one that cannot survive anymore. Take it to an extreme. When AI is embedded into weaponized systems like drones with capabilities to shoot or missiles that can make a decision, to proceed or not, then it becomes super dangerous. And this is where, you need to kind of as a company, and a lot of financial institutions, insurance companies, also some of the telcos are beginning to think very hard about this and saying, wait a second, how do we identify risks of where we could be doing unintended harm? Then how do we study that risk? I.e., how do we do an algorithmic audit to understand what's our exposure and what are the areas of unfairness and what should we watch out for? And then we also help them with an external, what we call a virtual ethical advisory board, where we've assembled, 40 worldwide experts in this area and said, would you help us have these discussions for a day or two with each of our company partners to help them understand kind of the risks they face, et cetera. So it's part of the education, it's part of the understanding, it's part of the awareness, and it's part of avoiding the problems. And these unintended problems happen all the time in technology. They happen more frequently with AI because the AI now is being used to make a lot of decisions. So, for example, I'll give you a quick example. A lot of us grew familiar with the pulse oximeters during the pandemic, right? These things you put on your finger and they tell you your oxygen saturation and your pulse. Well, it turns out these algorithms were in those devices were optimized for fair-skinned people, right? So if you happen to have dark skin, these things don't work as well. Yet the market is unaware of this, and the manufacturer never thought about it, right? And these things come after the fact. There's plenty of examples in the justice system and in many other areas, in credit risk and so forth, where the consequences can be huge on human lives, on livelihoods, on future, on career. And that's where we need to be careful and we need to be aware. And that's why we think responsible AI is yet another area that needs a lot of attention. By the way, most large employers I know of want to hire people in this area, but they don't know who to hire and what to hire for. And similarly, most universities, or actually all universities, and I include Northeastern in that, don't know what should be taught in doing responsible AI. And actually, we're working with our London campus on creating a curriculum for responsible AI. And we figured the best way to do this is to launch a responsible AI practice, do it ourselves, like conduct risk assessments, do this consulting, do the algorithmic audits, and from there emerge the right curriculum to kind of teach and train the workforce that addresses this responsible AI area.
And there is so much going on at the moment. It feels like we're navigating uncharted digital waters and just beginning to explore the art of the possible. So I'm curious, are there any particular trends in AI that excite you right now?
There's many exciting areas. I mean, the field, of course, is super excited by the area of deep learning, which is this area of saying, look, what if I took a neural network, which is technology back from the 80s, but I now increased its complexity in a huge way, right? Increase the number of layers at the input, increase the number of intermediate layers, allowing it to model with higher complexity. Well, basic statistics says, as you increase the complexity of these models, you need a heck of a lot more data to be confident of the answer they give you. But we're seeing something that's counter to all of that, right? We're seeing actually with increased complexity, we're getting increased accuracy, which goes against traditional statistics. So explaining why that phenomenon is happening is a big deal. Another one that I think needs a lot more understanding is how do we more properly embed human interaction with algorithms in order to make them smarter? What's the right way to get that intervention from a human being and get them to provide the minimum amount of information that is maximally informative to the algorithm, that kind of optimizes the learnings from each time you get a situation incorrectly or you run into trouble. One of my favorite examples here is, and again, an example of the big hype. About 6 months ago, Elon Musk promised that by 2022, i.e., this year, we will have autonomous vehicles, right? And we're nowhere near that point, by the way. However, for example, I'm a huge believer that we will have autonomy in slow-moving vehicles that can afford to stop and wait. So if you're a garbage truck and you face a situation you haven't seen before, because you're trained on machine learning, and you see something, then you can stop and say, okay, I'm stopping now. I'm calling for help intervention. A human operator can effectively teleport in there, look at the sensors, look at the video images, and say, oh, okay, that's a balloon, or oh, watch out, that's a deer, or that's a baby, or whatever it is, and provide that feedback very quickly in real time. The truck can then proceed with its garbage of processing more garbage bins down the road. But that setting, for example, is a great setting where you can have that experiential AI proceed, where the human intervention helps the algorithms, and the algorithms help focus the human on the situations where it needs the most help. That's another area. Responsible AI and figuring out how to mitigate the risks of what the technology could do is also a very exciting and important area to be studied. And of course, figuring out the formula for what data do we need, how do we make that data useful. Data gathered for human beings is very different than data needed by machine learning algorithms and data science algorithms. Humans need aggregation and summarization and visualization. Algorithm needs detail, and the detail needs to be very accurate, very complete. And if it's not, the algorithm gets into trouble. So figuring out all those requirements to make an AI robust is also an important field of study. So a very, very exciting time here as we see more and more AI applied to our daily lives.
And I appreciate it's relatively early days, but what's your big focus for the Institute right now? Where do you go from here?
Yeah, so we are driving forth with our AI Solutions Hub. We believe our deep involvement in developing real solutions to real problems under real constraints is the right way to advance the state of the art of AI. So we will advance the frontier of where the algorithms work. By the way, I think this is how China, for example, came from a very far, being a very far player in this field. The US had probably a 70-year lead over China in the area of AI. But because China focused on a lot of making the technology work in real applications, they managed to catch up in the last 15 years. So for us, we're driving kind of academia in the direction of saying research should be focused on answering a lot of these applied problems. And within those applications, we will find, in the words of Dave Rue, who's one of the big funders of the Institute, the AI Solutions Hub shop floor is littered with Nobel Prize-winning problems waiting to be solved. So that's the philosophy we're following, and we think it will lead us to very interesting and exciting areas of research in AI.
Fantastic. Well, I've loved chatting with you today. And we started the podcast talking about your origin story, what put you on this path. And as we come full circle now, I'm going to ask you to look back at your career and ask you, what was the funniest or most interesting story that has happened to you? Because there's always a few of those moments in a career. So is there any that spring to mind for you?
Yeah. I mean, life is funny, and we should never take it too seriously. Tons of funny stories, bad decisions I made. But I'll share with you one story which kind of amazed me for a long time. When this is 2004, Yahoo was in the process of acquiring my second startup. We were in negotiations, and when we finalized everything and said, fine, you can acquire the company, we'll bring the team over. Here's what I will do for Yahoo. Here's the kinds of things I will sign up for. We turned around and some of the founders, Jerry Yang, basically turns around and says, well, Usama, what shall we call you? And this was the executive team kind of assembled, the top executive team. And I said, honestly, I don't care. I'm here for 2 years. I'm going to get my earnout and leave. So call me whatever you like. And Yahoo has this culture for irreverent titles. So at the time, they said, okay, maybe we'll call you Chief Data Officer. That sounds funny enough. And everybody laughed. And at the time, we were not aware of Chief Data Officer as a title out there. What's funny is, so it started out as a joke. I took on that title, and the world took it very seriously. So, fast forward to Barclays, I joined as their Global Chief Data Officer. I'm in a conference, and somebody walks up to me and says, hey, Usama, are you aware that there's over 1,000 Chief Data Officers in the industry right now? And I looked at him saying, oh my God, if you just knew the origin of where that started.
What a brilliant story. Absolutely love that. And before I let you go, for anyone listening, just want to find out a little bit more information about all the things we talked about today, especially the work at the university there. What's the best starting point to find more information, contact your team, etc., or just keep up to speed with what you're doing? What's the best starting point?
A great place to go is our website, ai.northeastern.edu. And that will point you to many areas. We're definitely very active on LinkedIn. We're very active on Twitter, so you'll find a lot of our postings. We post a lot of stuff about our faculty, their research, how to get to know them, as well as the projects we have going. So I encourage you to go there. There's also a great summary of our inaugural day there with a lot of CEOs from the industry speaking and so forth. Lots of great material. That gives you a good idea of what we're up to at Northeastern University. So ai.northeastern.edu.
Well, I'll add that link to the show notes so people can find you nice and easily. I do recommend people do check it out. There's so much great stuff over there. And more than anything, though, just a big thank you to you for coming on here, sharing your road to success, talking about the launch of the Institute, and, of course, the incredibly important topic of responsible AI. I'd love to stay in touch with you, see where this leads, but more than anything, just thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Neil. Great to be here and great talking to you.
And I loved hearing how Usama is leading initiatives currently seeking ways to develop human-level AI, specifically experiential AI, solving real-world problems, and also exploring responsible AI too. And what an origin story as well, being the first person to hold the Chief Data Officer title at Yahoo. And the story behind that, pure gold from my side. But more than anything, a big thank you to him for coming on here, and a big thank you to you for listening. And if you've got any questions, insights, observations, questions, pitches to come on the show, whatever it is, you know where to find me by now. techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram at Neil C. Hughes. We'll keep that conversation going, and I'll return again tomorrow and we'll explore another topic together. But a big thank you for listening, and until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.